Please be seated. And good evening. First of all, I'll just indicate that where Mayor Cisco is tonight, he is on a trip to the Netherlands with the Lincoln and Welland Regiment and the Lincoln and Welland Band to commemorate how the members of the Lincoln and Welland Regiment fought during the Second World War to help free the Dutch from the German advancing. I did receive a comment from the mayor today indicating that it is a trip that he will never, ever forget, one of the best trips he's ever been on. So well-deserved vacation for the mayor, and we look forward to seeing him back soon. As far as the mayor's report today, it is brief, or the deputy mayor's report. First of all, I had the opportunity to open a new restaurant, the Courtyard Bar and Grill, on Friday night. I recommend that anyone who has a chance to visit there to go and see it. It's great food and a very warm reception. Secondly, I was able to attend the Ontario Big City Mayors conference, or not conference actually, meeting on Friday, and it dealt with homelessness primarily. And I can tell you that the situation we have in St. Catharines is shared by every large city in Ontario. It was a very, very interesting meeting to hear all the mayors speak about their situation. They did put together a request to the provincial government that the provincial government establish a separate ministry to deal with the situation that all of us are experiencing. It was very, very interesting to hear what they were dealing with, very similar to us, and in some situations very different than us. And lastly, being on the symphony board, I have to remind you that the Niagara Symphony is going to be performing the Queen Symphony on November the 23rd and 24th, backed by, or I shouldn't say backed by, but vocals will be performed by Chorus Niagara, and it should be a really, really good show. So if you're interested in hearing the music of Queen, I would suggest you get your tickets as soon as possible, because I hear they are going fast. With that, we will go around the circle. Is there anyone who would like to bring forward anything that they've been doing exciting in the last 2 weeks? Councillor Dodge.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that Happy Rolf's put on another Pumpkinville, and it was well attended, and staff did a great job, as well as volunteers and whatnot. And I think that everybody that went was extremely happy with the weather for sure, and all of the things that were able to be done with the family members and stuff like that. So I just wanted to say congratulations, and hope to see even more people next year, because it certainly is a good time, and thank you for putting this on.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, on Friday, October 11th, I was at the West St. Catharines Older Adult Center. There's a Chief Upper and Fire Prevention's been putting on some fire prevention classes, I guess you'd call it, for our seniors. A little late attended out there, but very informative, and the people there really enjoyed it and learned a lot, so it was a very good day for that. And last Thursday, the 17th, Holiday Inn Stainbridge Suites celebrated their grand reopening. The whole hotel has been redone now. It's 6, 7, and 8 floors are all suites, as is with the old bank in the corner there, and the Topless family just did an awesome job. Every room is redone. That whole facility is now like all done, top notch. I mean, the Topless family, like, they do so much in the community here as well, so kudos for that. I presented them a plaque on behalf of the city for that. They didn't want a ribbon cutting. didn't want to go too fancy, but, and then, of course, on Saturday was Jillian's place, Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. So we did it with our CAO, David Oakes, had high heels on, as did Brian York, high heel shoes, Chief Upper, and myself, I wore sparkly Crocs, because I can't wear high heel shoes. I tried it, doesn't work. And I only missed the last 2 out of the last 10 years, so it's we're really well attended, and they raised a lot of money and awareness for that. And I'm going to throw a plug out there. Last Friday, my daughter finally graduated from Brock University, 10 years after starting. So she's been working in between, but she went back in night school and did it. So it just goes to show you, never give up. You can keep doing, and she got her degree. So kudos to that. And this Thursday coming, the Grantham Lions Club is having a pasta night at the Grantham Lions Club on Niagara Street. So get out there and support the Lions Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Garcia, and after your message, I'll ask you to read the land acknowledgement too, which I forgot to ask you to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to remind everyone on council and everyone watching that this Saturday, October 26th, will be the 3rd annual East Coast Party fundraiser that the Performing Arts Center holds. And it focuses on music from PEI as well as food, and they have great entertainers, great food, and drinks are included, and they have an amazing silent auction, particularly this year. So tickets are still available if anybody gets a chance, and you're helping a great cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The adoption of the agenda. Clerk, please.
Land acknowledgement.
Oh, I'm sorry, land acknowledgement.
Okay, thank you. The land on which council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many indigenous peoples, made up of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement should remind us of our responsibility to ensure the dish, the territories on which we live and work, is never emptied, and that we take care of the land and its inhabitants in a way that ensures its future sustainability.
Thank you. Now for the adoption of the agenda. Clerk?
There are no amendments to the agenda this evening, and the following items of additional correspondence have been placed in Council's Sugar Sync folder. It may be made publicly available by contacting the City Clerk's office. Correspondence from the Town of Grimsby regarding Town of Grimsby comments on pay-on-demand surety bond regulation proposal, and confidential memorandum from staff regarding Seymour Hannah Sports and Entertainment Center refrigeration replacement project, 2025.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Stevens, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dodge. Thank you. All in favor? Raise your hand, please. Thank you. Adoption of minutes. Council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on October the 7th, 2024. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes? Councillor Lindell, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Harris, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest at that time? If yes, as a reminder, councillor is required to submit written statements of declarations via the online form. Seeing none. Motion to move consent reports. Councillor Harris, did you have one? Oh, I thought.
I did ask for I wanted to ask for a staff report on some correspondence that came from Henry Pelham Winery regarding a water line.
Yes.
I was assuming that I would be asking for that report, during the report section. Is that correct?
You can do it then, or we can do it now if you want, seeing as how you're here.
So I'm looking for staff to get back to council regarding a possible water line installation at Henry of Pelham Winery, and I believe there was a letter sent by the owners to the mayor and council.
Okay. All in favor of that report request? Thank you. And the motion that council approve the consent agenda, save and accept those items brought forward for discussion. Councillor Lindell? No seconders required. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Thank you. And I'll look to the clerk to read the consent reports and call a recorded vote, please. Yes, Councillor.
I was wondering, could I put a time frame on getting that report back? Could I ask staff how long it would take to come back with a report?
You can try.
I could, okay. Well, I'll ask staff. How long would it take to, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to
Director
the Director of
Mercutio?
Planning? Or, I think it's more a planning thing than,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair to the counselor, we can get that through by Q4 of this year.
Q4 meaning,
Later.
okay, that
this
sounds good.
year.
Okay. So what, do we have like roughly a date that we can,
Through the mayor to the counselor, we can target the December meeting of council.
okay, what day do we meet in December? I'd like to put it actually right in there so we have it.
December 7.
December 7th?
9.
9th, okay, so December 9th. So that'll be reflected in the minutes, I guess?
Sure.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Williamson, did you have something that you wanted to pull?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I thought that you had mentioned earlier today you're going to pull something.
I'm going to ask for a report request instead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, clerk, would you please read the list of consent reports, and we'll ask for a recorded vote.
Today's consent agenda includes item 6.1, Engineering, Facilities, and Environmental Services, Environmental Services Climate Adaptation Plan Annual Progress Report, and item 6.2, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Council Correspondence. Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes?
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner? And Deputy Mayor Phillips?
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. Okay, we're back to this. Okay, declaration to all presenters. Councillor Chambers is, in all municipalities in our country, represent the seat of local democracy. The many acts that govern us understand the necessity of the collective voice when decisions are being made to grow our spaces, pass our laws, and to seek opinions into very complex issues, ensuring safe spaces for all in our public discourse. We recognize the right of the majority to decide, the minority to be heard, the public to have an opportunity to participate, and all participants to be treated with courtesy and respect. It is imperative that elected officials, citizens, and staff have input, and it is paramount that we listen to one another and question one another, but that we understand we do this in a way that never undermines any person's ability or their dignity in our chambers. We respect the right for everyone to have an opinion and remind the audience views of the public do not always reflect those of the corporation of the City of St. Catharines. Now we're moving to a public meeting with Planning and Building Services. And please come forward to make your presentation. What's that?
You have to read all of this.
Okay, I have to read something first, so before you come up. The purpose of this public meeting is to ensure that sufficient information is available for the public and council to understand the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications to provide the public with an opportunity for input before council's decision. If a specified person or public body is defined in the Planning Act, or the register owner of the land does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission to council prior to council making its decision, they are not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or a written submission prior to the council decision, that person may not be added as a party to the hearing of any appeals by others without the permission of the tribunal. The public meeting will proceed as follows. Staff will explain the report and staff's recommendations. The Niagara region, who is the applicant, will provide a presentation. Members of the public wishing to delegate were advised to register at 9 o'clock this morning. No one has requested to speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak who is in attendance right now? Yes, sir. Thank you. And then the public meeting will be closed. Council will be able to ask staff questions and will consider the report and recommendations. The public meeting is now open. And I call upon Alexa Cooper, one of our planners, to present, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Phillips. Good evening, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Alexa Cooper, and tonight I'm here to present to you staff's recommendation report for 68 Church Street. The applicant has applied to amend the city's official plan to redesignate property to mixed high-density residential commercial and amend the city's zoning bylaw to rezone the land high-density mixed use, carry forward special provision 92, and to apply a new special provision on the subject plans. Here you can see a location map of 68 Church Street. It's bound by Church Street to the west, Academy Street to the north, King Street to the east, and Carlisle Street to the south. Here's some images of the site. The one on the left is from Church and Carlisle intersection, and the one on the right is from the King and Carlisle intersection, showing the former Niagara Regional Police Building. Uses to the west include churches and residential uses in behind. To the, oh geez. Forgive me. Uses to the north include residential and commercial uses. To the east, we have commercial uses and the transit terminal. And to the south are commercial uses and the central library. The conceptual proposal contains two buildings, one 27 stories and one 12, with a total of 305 dwelling units. There's 4,620 square meters of non-residential space, 162 underground parking spaces proposed, and 40 bicycle parking spaces. Here you can see the conceptual site plan, which shows the breakdown of the units throughout the building, as well as the 4-story extension out towards Academy Street. Here's a conceptual rendering of the proposal within the context of downtown. Staff have evaluated the proposal against provincial and regional policies and determined that the proposal is consistent with and conforms to those policies. In the city's official plan, the property is designated downtown in the general land use schedule, and it's within the downtown urban growth center. The property is further designated mixed medium high density residential commercial. This designation permits mixed-use buildings at a density range generally between 60 to 198 units per hectare. The proposal requests to redesignate the property a mixed high-density residential commercial, which also permits mixed-use building, but with additional density permissions. Staff have reviewed the proposal against the official plan policies and are satisfied the proposal conforms to the intent of the plan. The land is currently zoned medium high density mixed use with special provision 92, and special provision 92 exempts the subject's lands from parking requirements. The proposal is to rezone the property a high density mixed use, carry forward special provision 92, and to create a new special provision. This chart shows the requested special provisions and staff's recommendations, which have been formulated through feedback and collaboration with the applicant. In addition, staff have recommended additional provisions to help secure the conceptual development while providing flexibility where possible. Staff recommend the requested setback along Academy Street be 1 meter with additional setbacks for any height beyond the 4th story. This is to ensure additional height is set back appropriately from the existing low-rise buildings along Academy Street. Staff recommend the requested setback along King, Carlisle, and Church be 2 meters with an additional 2-meter setback above the 4th story. This provision is to ensure adequate landscaping space is available between the back of the sidewalk and the front of the building, in addition to securing a pedestrian-scaled podium that's reflective of the built form in the area. Staff recommend a maximum height of 95 meters where the 27-story building is proposed and 45 meters for the remainder of the site. This is reflective of the proposed concept, which provides a gradation in height from the residential uses on Academy to the 27-story building proposed at King and Carlisle. This transition is appropriate when paired with the required minimum setbacks from the various street frontages. Staff recommend a maximum encroachment of 6 meters for all rooftop mechanical equipment to ensure it can remain hidden from the public realm. Staff recommend a 4.5-meter non-residential ground floor ceiling height to provide flexibility for the types of tenants that could occupy the building. Staff recommend a minimum 60% glazing for the building podium of a street-facing facade, excluding Academy Street, to ensure a cohesive streetscape that delineates the lower portion of the building from the middle and top portions. Academy Street is recommended to be excluded due to its low-density residential built form, which contains less openings than a typical main street with tall buildings and commercial uses. Staff recommend a 25-meter distance between buildings on site with an additional setback above the podium to help secure the proposed private amenity space between the buildings. Staff recommend a building podium provision to further secure the podium for the proposal and to help mitigate any downward wind flow from the upper floors. Staff recommend a minimum landscape open space to further secure the proposed private outdoor amenity space. And finally, staff recommend a minimum ground floor outdoor amenity space to, again, secure that outdoor space. The application was circulated to departments and external agencies for review. CRCS requested regulations be put in place to secure the outdoor private amenity space, which we are recommending, and development engineering confirmed that there is sufficient servicing available for the proposal. An open house was held at City Hall on August 15th. Concerns received to date include insufficient parking provided for the proposal. Staff would like to note that in the downtown area, lands are exempt from providing parking spaces for all development. In addition, there are alternative transportation options available in the downtown and sufficient amenities in the surrounding area. There were concerns regarding the proposed access on Academy Street causing undesirable traffic conditions. Transportation staff have indicated this is the preferred location for the access as there are less conflicts from turning lanes, bus movements, and traffic signals. For these reasons, the proposed location is a safer option and doesn't interfere with the proposed courtyard on Carlisle. There were concerns regarding the proximity of the proposal to the adjacent townhouse block. Staff are of the opinion the proposed setback provides adequate buffering between the 4-story wing and the existing townhouse block as more than the required minimum setback has been provided. Finally, there were concerns about the removal of shared boundary trees. A tree preservation plan was submitted with the application showing the shared trees preserved. At time of site plan, staff will implement the recommendations of the plan. However, should both owners agree to remove the shared trees, the city would have no concerns. In conclusion, it's staff recommendation that council approve the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments subject to staff's recommendations contained in the report. With staff's recommendations, the proposal would align with the applicable provincial, regional, and local policies. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexa. Now I'll call upon Angela Stay, Director of Corporate Strategy and Community Sustainability from Niagara Region to present. And at this time also, Council, I'll make you aware of Brittany Frick from Niagara Region and Matthew Kernahan, who's a consultant from Garden City Developments. They're in attendance too if you have questions of them also. Angela?
Good evening. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and councilors, for your time this evening. We all set? Okay, excellent. My name is Angela Stea. I am the Director of Corporate Strategy and Community Sustainability with Niagara Region. We are the applicants on this application, which is a little bit of an unusual position for us to be on. For many years, I was a city planner in another municipality on that side of the bench, so bear with me in my little bit of nervousness this evening. I have with me Brian Fricke, who is the Senior Planner and Project Manager, and Matt Kernahan, our Planning Consultant, should you have any technical questions. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the application. Alexa did a great job this evening, but I thought it may be helpful to provide an overview of the principles, strategy, and process in which we bring this application this evening for your consideration. We are in support of staff's position and thank them for their time and working with us to refine the proposal that you see before you tonight. The vision was developed in collaboration with City of St. Catharines, councillors at the time, and regional staff. I believe that was in 2021, so briefly before my time. There are some images in the presentation that is the foundation of the planning applications you have tonight for recommendation. This is a conceptual redevelopment plan that's been devised with the expectation that the lands will be developed by a third party. The concept incorporates sound urban design principles in response to the surrounding local context, uses, and built form. And it's understood that once these lands are purchased by a developer, the details of the development will become further refined. A little bit tonight about the region's housing as a priority lens. Thank you. In late 2023, Niagara Region Council endorsed this housing as a priority lens for Niagara Region's corporate practices and decision-making to improve access to affordable and attainable housing in Niagara. The housing as a priority lens, which was put forward through a report to Regional Council, gave direction for us to use net proceeds from the sale of land for housing investments, including the reinvestment of new housing sites, including affordable, attainable rental housing across the region. What it allowed us also to do is to put aside funds from the sale and disposition of regional properties, no matter how big or small, towards the provision of affordable housing. We don't have a lot of money in the pot yet, but we're really hoping that 68 Church then is the project that helps us kick off the funding opportunities for affordable and attainable housing across the region. Specific to 68 Church, Regional Council provide direction on a disposition strategy. So that included funds as part of our capital budget for actual demolition of the site, which is not a light venture with that type of construction. And it also provided staff with direction to pursue the upzoning to ensure value for money of this regional asset. And that was based on background studies, including market and feasibility study. And I believe that report went to Regional Council in 2022. So that's what initiated us in beginning this process. In terms of next steps, should City Council approve this application, these applications, then the next step would be a future report to Regional Council to declare the property as surplus as part of our typical disposable land bylaw, and that includes a circulation to regional departments, local municipalities, agencies, and boards who will be notified of the potential surplus land and will then have an opportunity to put their hand up and say we're interested. So at this time, Community Services from Niagara Region has indicated that there isn't an interest to pursue this as an affordable housing site. This particular area, there feels like there's a concentration in Niagara Regional housing, and that really the proceeds from the sale of the property and putting it towards affordable housing would be the best use. A future report to council would then declare the property surplus and provide staff with direction as to how to prepare the property for sale and any conditions that may come that Regional Council may choose to include as part of that purchase and sale agreement. That is it in terms of my presentation. I thought I'd keep it brief tonight, but again, we are here for any questions, and again, Matt and Brittany are here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you to the presenter. So potentially then, funds from the sale of this property could accelerate the building of affordable housing at 320 Geneva Street after the transitional housing, because I heard the plan is we have to get that first, and then the region is supposedly supposed to build affordable or geared income housing on that lot as well. And so these funds would go towards that, so that could get built faster than normal.
Through the chair, through the chair, yes, ideally, that's the type of situation we're looking at. There's other examples, well, where we know a nonprofit has got federal funding, they've got provincial funding, they've got fundraiser through their particular organization, and they're just not quite there in terms, and they need a little bit more on a per-door basis. So those are the types of projects that, yes, ideally, this money would be able to help facilitate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter, I'm trying to understand the region's rationale here. So you want to sell this property and use the funding for affordable housing, but you're trying to get this project approved so that it will add value to what you're going to sell because you can say, I have this project approved, is this?
Through the chair? Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Thank you very much, Brittany, for your presentation. I have one gentleman who wishes to speak. Would you come forward, please? When you take the microphone, please introduce yourself.
My name's Harold Katz. I own one of the townhouses on Academy Street, and I attended the first meeting, had some of my questions answered, but I have a couple of serious concerns about approving the proposals, or
Go forth. Go ahead. Take your time.
I'm drawing a blank. The special provisions.
Okay.
So first of all, the first special provision allows immunity to providing parking, but we're going to build something here that has like 400 residences.
Sorry, councillors can't hear you,
Oh,
so
sorry.
just turn around and face them. I can hear you okay.
Okay, so the first special provision allows immunity from providing parking, but we're going to add 350 or 400 residences to this area. That just doesn't seem reasonable. I mean, somebody has to look realistically at providing somewhere for these cars to park. As it is, it's difficult finding a parking spot when people come to visit me. They have to park 2 blocks away and walk over. If we add another 200 or 300 cars to this neighborhood, it's going to be insane. Second, the special provision that they're asking for to extend the property to, or extend buildings to the property line, I have a serious concern about that. The building that faces on Church Street, or on Academy Street, if it's extended as far as possible, like to the edge of the sidewalk kind of thing, we're creating more traffic on that street, putting the entrance to the garage there, and we're not going to be able to see traffic coming. So the residents of those 4 townhouses, it's going to become difficult and dangerous to get out of your driveway. That creates an issue for me. The other thing that I'm concerned about is whoever is going to be demolishing the property, are they going to do something about the rodent infestation so that they don't just flee into the surrounding houses? That's everything. I don't know.
Are you finished? Are you done? Okay, thank you very much. What will happen now is see our Director of Planning writing many notes down, and as our councillors are discussing it, if they have any questions, she'll respond to the concerns you have. Okay? Do we have any questions from council right now? Councillor Raslav.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you. Thanks for coming today. Sorry, I missed which property you said that you owned.
One of the townhouses on Academy Street.
Okay.
Actually, the one that will be closest to the parking garage.
So that's on Academy and Church, or the other side? Academy and
Academy and Church, yeah.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance who wishes to speak to the topic? Councillor Stevens, did you have something you wanted to add, or a question?
Well, it's through.
Go ahead.
So I'm just asking questions for him only? Yes. Okay, then no, it's.
Okay. Hold that thought. Okay, can I have a motion to close the public meeting? Councillor Dodge, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kushner. Motion is that the council close the public meeting respecting recommendation for applications to amend official plan and zoning bylaw 2013-283, subject lands 68 Church Street. All in favor? Thank you. Public meeting is now closed. Persons wishing to receive notice of council's decisions should submit a written request to the office of the clerk.
Do we not get an opportunity to speak?
Sorry. Is that Councillor Williamson?
Yeah, yes.
Sorry, we didn't see you up there. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, well, it's partly my fault. Well, I'm not speaking in favor of this. We had an opportunity, public lands, to develop something that meets public needs here. Need not be simply about a prototypical real estate speculator style plan to maximize profits or prioritize the quantity of units over the quality of life. To me, we could have made this the affordable housing venue if we wanted to. In terms of sustainability,
Councillor Kushner, or Councillor Williamson, sorry.
yes, sir.
We have to move the recommendation first, and then we'll go to.
Oh, okay. I thought we skipped over the steps where we get to speak. My fault.
Is there a councillor who would like to move the recommendation in this report? Councillor McPherson, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Harris, thank you. Questions from staff? Now you can go, Councillor Williamson.
My sincere apologies. I'll continue from what I said. In terms of sustainability, we declared a climate crisis. And we know that taller buildings, once you get past 7 or 8 stories, maybe up to 10, become more expensive, both financially and in terms of carbon emissions and the energy inputs that go into building them and then maintaining them. And it's the type of building that's proven to be successful through history has been more of a mid-rise style development. And we seem to be interested in having 2 contrasting extremes, neither of which are particularly sustainable, and that is these very tall buildings and the single-story sprawl that we have inherited. But I don't see going to these tall buildings because of the lack of sustainability inherent in them to be making sense. So to me, we could have come up with a more happy medium that balanced climate change and sustainability issues as well as quality of life issues. For those reasons, I'm not going to support this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cote, would you respond to the concerns that the resident have at this point?
I have that question I was going to ask.
You take Councillor Stevens off for a moment while Councillor Cote responds to those concerns.
Through the chair to the councillor, the existing, okay, I'll go backwards. In 2010, when council was contemplating the Garden City official plan, there were discussions at the time about how the city was going to grow over the next 25 plus years. And options that were considered at the time was either going to allowing citywide mid-rise built form and densities, or trying to, quote unquote, protect established low-density residential neighborhoods by directing higher density growth to the downtown and, at that time, urban growth center, as well as arterial and other intensification corridors. And ultimately, council went that direction at the time, and our official plan policies since 2010 have reflected that. So that is why we see more density pushes in our downtown, because these properties are in walking distance to the bus terminal, as well as other services and daily needs. Yeah, so I think that will cover off the question around why we're looking at higher densities. It's because our official plan directs those types of densities to our downtown.
Thank you. We're going to go to Councillor Garcia. I haven't forgotten you yet. Oh, no, I guess you're up. Okay, go ahead. You're
All right,
next,
thank you,
so-
Deputy Mayor. Just a question to staff in regards to the residents' concern. With demos now, there is something new that we provide in the city. They have to do a rodent management plan, don't they? I read something about that. We have something like that, right?
Through the chair to the councillor, through the demolition process, once somebody applies for a permit to demolish a building, we do suggest a rodent mitigation plan. We cannot force it under the Building Code Act, but in this circumstance, we will be requesting it, and it will be up to the region to decide if that's a measure that they provide through the demolition process.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. A couple of questions of staff. I can't understand how we are proposing to approve 305 units with 162 underground parking spaces only, but the planner mentioned special provision 92. Are we saying that this area has a special provision that they don't have to provide adequate parking?
Director Cathay?
Through the mayor to the councillor, in the 2013 zoning bylaw for the city, there was a special provision 92 asserted area of over a large part of the downtown that parking was not, there was no required parking calculation. That's not to say that there is going to be no parking. What it really does is leaves those decisions up to the private market in the downtown to provide what they feel they need in terms of parking for their development. So in this case, is parking required? No. They are seeking to provide 162 underground parking spaces and 40 bicycle parking spaces across the two buildings.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to staff, so from a planning perspective, forgetting about that provision, do you think it's acceptable, 162 spots for 305 units? I assume these units are going to be relatively expensive, so we can't assume that these people are not going to have cars, right?
Through the councillor to, sorry, through the mayor to the councillor, at this time, it's a hypothetical upzoning and updesignation to seek permissions on the land. Once the region declares a land surplus and goes through their disposition process and finds a private buyer for the property, at that time they will refine their development. They'll refine what price points and what unit sizes and unit counts they're hitting, and we anticipate there'll be a reconciliation at that time. Alternatively, what we've seen in the downtown is that demand will dictate the supply in terms of parking once that's at the site plan process.
Thank you. So you're saying that there is a possibility that that parking will be adjusted at some time?
Through the mayor to the councillor, it is a possibility, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I have another question for the planning staff, and that is in terms of the zoning bylaw, the existing provision calls for a minimum front yard setback from Academy Street of 3 meters, and we're requesting 0.99 meters, which is about 3 feet. Are we saying this building is going to be about 3 feet from Academy Street?
Through the mayor to the councillor, staff are recommending 1 meter, which yes is about 3 feet from the property line. That's a minimum standard. When the developer purchases the property, that's not to say they may provide a larger setback, but staff are of the opinion that 1 meter is sufficient for the 4 stories that are proposed along Academy to provide landscaping and a good streetscape. It's reflective of other buildings that are in the area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lindell?
I just have a question, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to staff. If we sell, or if the region sells this property with this particular plan, whoever buys the property, do they have to carry out this site plan agreement?
Director Cote?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the region, once they surplus the property and list it for sale, they may or may not choose to put parameters around what's going to be built on the site. So I can't speak for the region at this time. However, there's nothing stopping an applicant for coming into the city and applying for a new project concept.
Okay, thank you.
I think what's important to realize that what you see on the screen as far as the building is concerned is, for lack of a better word, a suggestion or a possibility. This is what the region has gone forth saying, this is what it might look like. What we have done is given minimums as to design, and when they do sell the building or sell the property, then the hard work starts where they will determine what it's going to look like. Councillor Harris.
Nope. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Phillips. Actually, you just spoke about what I was going to say. The whole idea of this is for the region to sell it at the maximum value. What's presented to us is actually a conceptual drawing. So eventually it will come back to us with some sort of design, and a developer might choose to build something totally different. So I don't think it can hurt supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, this may have been a question, I guess, for the regional staff, but I'll ask it now anyways. How do you, like, I just feel like when you sell public land, you lose all your leverage, but I'm not sure, maybe there's provisions or there's some way that we can guarantee that something will be built. I guess my fear is that, it's sold and then we just end up with another empty lot, and we could have, like, it was ours at one point. It was in the public trust, and so we could have done something with it.
Was there a question there?
Yeah, how do we guarantee that actually something gets done with it?
Director Cote.
Through the mayor to the councillor, short answer is we cannot guarantee that something will happen with it. There are many market conditions that are at play right now, which is delaying a host of projects that we currently have in the pipe. That being said, the region has been quite clear that their intent is to sell the property to someone who is going to move forward with it, and I imagine that pro forma evaluations will be required at that time to at least give regional council that assurance that this will move forward to completion.
Thank you, that's helpful. So just to follow up, so the pro forma will be done in collaboration with the developer, and the region will, like, regional councilors will see that, or the region will do pro forma based on this current vision, and then regional council will be satisfied that this is a possibility, and then they sell the property, or how does that process work?
Through the mayor to the councillor, sophisticated builders who are doing large-scale, high-density projects typically work with pro formas when they are, before they move forward with even purchasing a property. They need to know that the numbers make sense, and so I would imagine they would have that in place before they even make any applications to the region itself. They do not, through any Planning Act process, they do not need to show their pro forma to anyone.
Yeah. And then one final question. Did the region come to us and did we have conversations with them about purchasing that property for the city's use? I mean, we don't have a development corporation yet, which I think would probably be a good tool to handle that, but, or they're just getting up and running, but did they approach the city about purchasing that property?
CA Oaks.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. There haven't been any discussions between the region and the municipality yet. The property hasn't been declared surplus. When that happens, there will be an opportunity for the municipality to basically for us to say we're interested or not, but that process hasn't started yet. It's contingent on the region doing the surplus declaration.
Right, and that's the same process that we entered into with 320 Geneva. So when we declared 320 Geneva, and then the region looked at purchasing it from us. That's correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, but it was essentially, we have a very similar
Yeah.
land disposal process, yes.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Kushner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question and then a comment. And my question pertains to what Councillor Williamson has stated, that there is an optimal number of stories from a financial and environmental consideration. Has our staff ever considered optimality as suggested by Councillor Williamson?
Councillor Cathay, or Director Cathay.
Through the mayor to the councillor, Councillor Williamson's statements around climate change adaptation and construction methods is not one of our policies that we evaluate, nor is it part of the legislation that we evaluate these applications against.
Okay. Thank you. And my question is with respect to visitor parking. How much visitor parking do we have there? And the reason I ask this is we're having problems in the south end with the new high-rise approvals that there is insufficient visitor parking. So that means that if there is not sufficient parking, then family members will not come to visit, and also personal support workers will find it very difficult to visit.
It's a point well taken, but given the fact that they don't have a builder yet to determine how many parking spaces, it's probably difficult to answer. I don't know, Director Cathay, if there's a percentage that is required or not. Could you answer that?
Through the deputy mayor to the councillor, as there is no minimum required parking in this area, there is no calculation or ratio required for visitor parking. Again, the subject's property is in walking distance to the bus station, and it's anticipated that not everybody in this development will have a vehicle. That being said, once there is a purchaser of this property and they come forward with a more refined development concept, at that time we will have a better understanding around dwelling units, price points, size of units, and what the tenure is going to be, if it's going to be rental versus owner tenureship. So long way of saying we don't know at this time, but we cannot force a visitor calculation through this process.
Okay. Thank you for a very complete answer.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller? Everything. We just lost everything on the screen. You there, Councillor Miller? Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Through you to, I'm thinking the director, but I'll ask my question first. With this M292 provision for parking and stuff like that, when that was put in place, was there a consideration over, like, I would think this would be a larger than what we've been building type of project? Was it, like, did they take that in consideration when they put in their provisions?
Through the chair to the councillor, the downtown, are you referring to the parking exemption specifically? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that actually, it was carried forward in the 2013 comprehensive zoning bylaw, but actually existed downtown even before that. We've had it for quite some time. And as Director Kate mentioned, it really is an acknowledgement that within the downtown context, it's probably more appropriate for the development to provide the amount of parking that they think makes sense in order to either lease or sell the units in that project. We do have a few active applications for taller buildings in and around the downtown now. They are providing a range of different parking. There's some that are providing very little parking. There are some that are providing more parking than what's being considered in this project. I think ultimately it certainly does benefit from being right across the street from the transit terminal, right across the street from the Carlisle Street Garage, right across the street from our Garden Park lot. There's quite a number of off-site parking opportunities if they do need visitors or short-term use. This would certainly be an excellent candidate, probably not a better site in the city in terms of available transportation options. But that parking exemption is a long-standing permission that is an umbrella and applies to buildings of all scale. So it would apply to small infill, adaptive reuse projects, but also towers. And it really does put the onus on the builder to construct only the amount of parking that they feel is necessary to sell the units.
Okay. I guess when I look at it as someone that takes complaints from residents where there's not enough parking in an area, when does that come into play for us? Do you know what I mean? Like, we're building several large buildings down there, and every one of them, like you're just saying, okay, well, the developer is the person that can decide how much parking they need, but do we as a city have some sort of responsibility to, so that we don't flood the market with, we have no parking, but we have all these people that need to park?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I think I would suggest it comes down to choice, a large part. But we've also heard loud and clear the desire to promote affordability and try to reduce the cost of housing by removing and by unbundling the need to purchase a parking stall with your unit. That's a tremendous cost that gets passed on to the purchaser. If we can give people in St. Catharines the opportunity to purchase or rent a unit that doesn't have the cost of a parking stall baked into the upfront cost and baked into the long-term maintenance, that goes a long way to promoting affordability as well.
I get all those points, but I also feel that, it affects other people's lives as well. If they can't find parking, it's overflowed into their neighborhoods where they didn't have it before, and different situations like that. And that creates more problems on itself, sort of thing. So I think that it makes it tough when you start talking about parking and having very little parking for an abundance of, like one of the councillors that's from the downtown area. We were going over the site plan there, or the area, and she was showing me all the different places that people can park. But in this particular development, there's also a lot of commercial in there. But apparently, I guess we don't have to have parking for commercial entities downtown. So I think that, we have to maybe try and keep that in mind, that eventually there's going to be more parking required and no place to put them. And then my second comment is about the rodent issue. I'm hoping that we can be a little more strong about that, because I know in the North End we have a lot of rodents, and a lot of people are suffering with what they bring with them. So I know that when we've had other developments, they've moved out. So if we could contain that and possibly eradicate that so that it doesn't move into other areas, it would be very beneficial for everyone in the city.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller, are you still with us?
I hope so. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on there. I had a question along the lines, I guess, of Councillor Ratzlaff, so feel free if this is going into perhaps in-camera territory. I'm just curious how our approval or not of this tonight would then relate to when the region declares surplus, our own MDC's ability to be involved at that point. I mean, what's the interaction there?
Director Cathay.
Through the Deputy Mayor to the Councillor, earlier this evening, the CAO described the region's surplus processes as very much in line with our own. So once the Regional Council declares a property surplus, then they will be reaching out to other public agencies and utilities, et cetera, for basically first right of refusal. And should there be interest from the MDC at that time, we can explore it.
Okay, yeah, and I guess similar, like I think this is land we should be interested as an MDC. I suppose, I guess my question is, if hypothetically, if that occurs, how bound are we to the decisions we make tonight with regards to the zoning of this and the conception of this property or these properties?
Director Cathay.
Through the Deputy Mayor to the Councillor, we have to think of the two in isolation, quite honestly. So the application that's before you this evening, Council needs to make a decision on whether they support the up designation, up zoning on its own. It can't be related or tied to a future Regional Council decision on the property disposition.
Yeah, and I fully appreciate that. I think similar to Councillor Ratzlaff, though, my concern is, we've been a victim of speculation for a long time in the city, and especially on these bigger sites. And I would hate to make that worse by enhancing the value of this property so that someone can purchase it and sit on it for decades while the value goes up. So yeah, that makes this a little bit difficult. I'd prefer to see this stay in public hands, whether it's the region developing the site as social housing or us or the MDC developing it. So I'd love to think of them in isolation. It's just difficult. And my only other comment would be that I appreciate that Councillor Williamson regularly brings up the climate change emergency, and yet we still talk about parking almost every single meeting as our sort of golden calf. It comes up a lot, whether it's at Lakeside Park or every single approval we have to make sure there's enough parking, or at Mountain Locks Park we can't add 2 more parking spots there. So it's just, we need to, I think, get over that. I think it's all well and good to think about how tall buildings are going to come down in 150 years. But I think we have a responsibility right now to reduce our carbon emissions as a community. And I think reducing reliance on cars and honestly, and reducing the expectation that everyone's going to have a car or 2 cars. This, as has been mentioned several times, this is one of the more obvious properties where you're not going to need a car. And I think we need to be taking steps to encourage that. And part of that is not wringing our hands every time a supposed lack of parking comes up. So I'm in favor of the upzoning. The parking spots I'm not too concerned about. My concern is this property sitting empty at sites that GM and the old hospital and Port Dalhousie have done for years and years and decades. So certainly hope, no matter what happens tonight, this is a project that the public, whether through the region or the city, stays actively involved in. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Harris, once again.
I think we're complicating things. I just want to be clear. I'm going to ask the Director of Planning. All we're doing is giving the region the ability to get the most money possible if they put it up for sale after they surplus it.
Through the Deputy Mayor to the Councillor, that is the region's expectation this evening.
Perfect.
From the city's perspective, we have a recommendation to support an upzoning and up designation based on the concept they've provided.
So yes.
Yes.
And then the next question would be, when the future developer, whoever buys the property, they'll come back and then you'll have a site plan and talk about parking and all that kind of stuff and come up with a design.
Through the Deputy Mayor to the Councillor, should the future builder of this property choose to go forward with this concept, then it would go straight to provided that council approves it this evening, it would go straight to site plan. Of course, the future buyer or builder, if they'd like to go in a different direction that also requires an official plan amendment or zoning bylaw amendment, that would be back in front of council again. But if it conforms to the policy environment of the day, it could go straight to site plan.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. And just before we vote, and I'm sure our experts at the very back are listening to parking concerns, and I'm sure you'll discuss that with any developer that comes along. Personally, I think it's up to the developer to know how many units he's going to sell that needs a car versus how much it costs to put a parking space underneath the ground. And the developers are the experts as far as what they need to do to sell their units. So we have to leave it with them, and we'll wait and see what they bring back when the time comes. So with that, I'll ask the clerk to call for a recorded vote. No, I'm sorry, I thought the director addressed your concern. Not at all. Okay.
Let's just approve it, and then when the developer comes, let them do what they want to do. Once you approve this, there's no way the developer is going to give up a square inch of building space. There's no way he's going to get any more than
Perhaps
required by law.
mm-hmm.
Right?
He can appeal, jump in.
Well, all we're doing is referring it to the region at this point. Thank you. We're voting to approve the, to make it a higher density. Yes. And what goes on there is up to them, and that's the way it's going to stay. Thank you. Director Cote, would you like to address this further?
Through the Deputy Mayor, if it would provide some clarity, the region's application is not seeking to change the zoning bylaws parking requirement. The parking requirement as it is right now is that there is no parking requirement, leaving it entirely up to the applicant to choose how much parking they want to provide based on the market conditions of what they'll eventually build, which will depend on tenure, price point, unit size, and other cost and other factors. So there is no provision in front of council to approve tonight for parking. That's not in front of council this evening. With concerns to the delegate, in response to the delegation with the other concerns, so that addresses the parking, is that there is no parking in front of council for consideration this evening. The 2013 zoning bylaw established a no minimum parking requirement in the downtown. We did hear from staff on the front yard setback for the 4-story building fronting onto Academy. And in terms of the rodent mitigation, we will be recommending to the region when they undertake the demolition permit that is something that they do. So at this time, the amendments that are before council for your, the recommendation before council this evening, that's what it would include, is with regards to the OPA and the ZBA, but not the building permit, and not the rodents, and not the parking.
Okay, now I'm going to call for the recorded vote, please.
Yeah.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
No.
Councillor Dodge?
No.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Phillips?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Thank you. Financial and Management Services Financial Report and Auditor Findings and Observations for the year ended December 31st, 2023. And prior to discussing this report, I'll look to Carlos Alvarez, CPA, CA, Lead Audit Engagement Partner from KPMG to present. Carlos, are you with us up there?
I am. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of council. Thank you for the warm welcome. My name is Carlos Alvarez, audit partner with KPMG, and I will lead you through the audit findings report, which summarizes the financial statement audit that we performed on your financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2023. Certainly this report is pretty lengthy, given that it is over 30 pages, but I will walk you through those items that I believe are most significant and material that I would like to bring forward to your attention. So if we may advance the slides to page 139, which is also page 4 within this document, just by way of overall audit highlights. We are substantially complete in terms of the audit process, and I'll speak to some of those items that remain outstanding just in a few slides. We would have presented an audit plan to council earlier in the audit process. I can confirm with all of you members of council that in terms of how we executed the audit, it was effectively consistent with what we would have presented to you as an audit plan. For those in the world of accounting and auditing, 2023 was rather exciting in that there were a few new accounting standards. The most significant to the city was a new accounting standard called asset retirement obligations, which did have an impact on your financial statements, which again, I'll speak to just in a few slides. In terms of the accounting policies and the auditing rules that govern a financial statement audit in Canada, other than the new accounting standard, all of the other elements were largely consistent between 2023 and 2022. What would be an audit without discussing misstatements? Over the course of our audit, we did detect one misstatement, which was subsequently recorded and corrected by your management team. I would like to skip ahead, if I may, in terms of those items that are outstanding. One more slide, please. Just in terms of status, as of today being August the 21st, these are items that we would consider customary when we present results to council. We do have our subsequent events and fraud inquiries to update with management, as well as updating our procedures as to the existence of any items relating to litigation and claims. And we will ask your management team to sign a very important letter. It is called a management representation letter, and it simply outlines what are management's responsibilities as it pertains to these financial statements compared to the responsibilities of an auditor. And if anything comes out of this process, as we complete these procedures, certainly we will notify council as needed. Moving along in the report, one important topic, we as auditors always have a heightened level of professional skepticism, and certainly we design certain procedures around the risk of management override of controls. I can confirm with all of you members of council that during the course of our audit process, whether it be the documents that we reviewed, procedures that we performed, all of our inquiries, testing of journal entries, that there was nothing unusual that we detected. There were no acts of fraud that we detected, and so there are no reportable findings to bring forward to your attention on the topic of fraud. The one item that we would like to discuss with you is over the course of our journal entry testing, we did note a deficiency in the internal control framework in that Not all journal entries had a second set of eyes prior to the entry being posted. We have provided this observation to management. They have provided their response, largely pertaining to system limitations. And again, we'll profile this just a little bit further on in the report. Moving along, if we can advance the pages, please. In terms of accounts payable and operating expenditures, this is the one area where we did detect a misstatement. It is noted at the bottom relating to payments between the city and the region of Niagara, which was $2.8 million. Again, this has been corrected, which means the draft financial statements that you have before you this evening include the results of this adjustment. Moving further along in the presentation, we can skip ahead to control deficiencies, which is on page 12. So again, this just provides some definitions. We do classify deficiencies into two buckets, one being significant deficiencies, and then others being just deficiencies. Back to that journal entry comment I made earlier, technically that would be considered a significant deficiency. And again, this has been discussed with management as well. Moving along in the report, in terms of the accounting policies and practices, again, other than the new accounting standards, the other accounting policies that would have been used were applied on a consistent basis. With respect to that new accounting standard called asset retirement obligations, you will see that within your financial statements, you have two columns, 2023, 2022. 2022 is labeled as restated. Just to put council at ease, the 2022 results are restated not because of an error, but because of the adoption of the new standard, which allows you to go back and restate the prior year financial statements. And so that was the case. Moving along in the report, I would like to comment on a few things. In terms of the asset retirement obligations, again, we reviewed our disclosures. We believe that it is accurate. There is a new piece of disclosure that shows exactly what was restated. And so we're happy that your disclosures include all of the items that you would expect to see in a set of financial statements. At the bottom of this slide, certainly if you compare the results of the city on a year-over-year basis, certainly there was a significant contributed asset amount, between the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the city, and that was approximately $64 million. Again, we would have vouched this item to agreements and made sure that all of the accounting was correct. Moving along to the next slide, please. Always very important for your auditors to talk about independence. If you were to read our audit report, the word in front of the audit report says independent. I can confirm to all of you as members of council that we remained independent throughout the entire audit process. We are always watchful to ensure that we don't perform bookkeeping services. We're not auditing our own work, nor are we providing any other services that would threaten our independence. So again, I can confirm that we remained independent. Further in the report, we have included several appendices. I'll just briefly make a comment. If you go a little bit further in on cybersecurity, certainly we are all aware of the risks associated with cybersecurity. It's a little bit further back. One more slide, please. So what we've outlined is just some best practices that we see in the world of municipalities and government. Again, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up this topic, just given how significant it is. Certainly, we had discussions with management, and we probed your management team in terms of what are they doing to continue to invest in this area? Are they training their employees, et cetera? So this information is more for, if anything, perks anyone's interest. Happy to speak to any of these items, either today or at a later stage. But there is a lot of text, so my plan was not to go through this in any detail. And lastly, I would like to comment that your financial statements, if you look at the very first page, has the word consolidated. That means that there are components that roll up into the financial statements, whether it be the wholly owned hydro, business improvement areas, and all of those components have separate audits. So we audit all of those components separately. All of those components would have had audited financial statements and audit reports already issued for 2023. So I just would like to make that observation. And secondly, just as a reminder for councils, often councils are very curious as to the level of scope that we use to conduct the audit. Again, when we presented the audit plan, we would have presented a concept of materiality. And for the 2023 audit, we did set that materiality up at $6.6 million, which compares to $6.4 million in the previous year, being 2022. Individually, $6 million is a very large number. We have a much lower tolerance for audit differences, set at approximately 5% of that figure, just to give you a better sense as to the level of our scope. So at this point, we do have some of those procedures to tie up, over the course of the next week. But once those are completed and we obtain both the signed representation letter and obviously evidence of council's ultimate approval of the financial statements, then I would be in a position where I sign the auditor's report. With that, I will pause and back to you, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Carlos. Before I open it up to questions, we also have Jody Nesbitt, who's the Audit Senior Manager with KPMG, and she's in attendance via Zoom also. Do we have any questions from council at all? Seeing none, Carlos, you did a great job. Thank you very much. Good evening. Can I have a motion to receive the presentation, please? Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor Dodge. Thank you. Motion before us that Council receive the presentation from Carlos Alvarez regarding the financial report and auditor findings and observations for the year ended December 13th, 2023. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now, can I get a councillor to move the recommendation in the report? Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor Stevens. Thank you. Recommendation in the report that council approve the annual financial report for the year ended December 31st, 2023. And I'll ask for a recorded vote. Clerk.
Councillor Kushner. Yes. Councillor Stevens. Yes. Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge. Yes. Councillor Garcia. Yes. Councillor Harris. Yes. Councillor Lindell. Yes. Councillor McPherson. Yes. Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff. Yes. And Deputy Mayor Phillips.
Yes.
And that's carried, unanimous.
Thank you. Moving to 9.2, Community Recreation, Culture Services, Recreation, Culture Programs. I look to Kathleen Powell, Supervisor of Historical Services / Curator, John Linton and Greg Young from TCI Management Consultants to provide a presentation. Please come forward. Welcome.
And members of St. Catharines City Council, thank you so much for having us here this evening to present the St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canals Center's new strategic plan. This plan brings together a 7-year planning direction for the operations of the St. Catharines Museum and builds on the museum's previous strategic plan, which provided a strong operational direction for the museum since 2016. I'd like to introduce John Linton, who is here with me, and Greg Young, who is in the audience, principals at TCI Management Consultants, who I will allow to introduce themselves.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out of thanks to Kathy Powell and her team for advice and assistance throughout the updating of the strategic plan project. Also like to thank the well over 100 individuals within the community who participated in a survey, an interview, participated in a workshop session. It really did demonstrate to us a high degree of support and enthusiasm for what the museum represents and what the museum is doing. You might want to know a little bit about who we are. So Greg and myself represent TCI Management Consultants. We have worked in the cultural sector for about 35 years now. Prior to that, we both had senior positions at Ernst & Young. We're specialists in strategic planning in the cultural sector. In addition to working with a lot of museums, we also work with libraries, art galleries, science centers, performing arts facilities, and so forth. And we are also familiar with the museum from previous work here in St. Catharines. We've also done work elsewhere in the region, in Niagara-on-the-Lake and in Niagara Falls, Fort Erie, Lincoln, Grimsby, and so forth. Over to Kathy.
The new strategic plan, which we are presenting this evening, is a renewal of the museum's previous 5-year strategic plan, which covered the years 2016 to 2020. Due to the extraordinary circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic and a complete shift in the museum's direction during that time to digital offerings and severely limited in-person public programming, it was felt that it was prudent to postpone the renewal of the museum's strategic plan to really get a full understanding about what the new operating environment was going to look like post-pandemic. It was clear from the big changes that came about as a result of the pandemic that museum operations were not going to be exactly as they had been previously. By 2023, visitation to the museum and uptake in public programming began to recover to pre-2019 levels. So it was time to look forward to our direction for the next 5 to 7 years. To that end, through the normal tender process, TCI Management Consultants were engaged to take the museum through the strategic planning process. From the outset, it was decided that the museum's mission, vision, and overall goal statements from the previous strategic plan were still a relevant framework for planning the museum's forward direction. To that end, rather than start from scratch, this plan builds on the last strategic plan. The consultation process essentially validated this perspective, as most of the people that John and Greg spoke with felt that the mission, vision, and essentially the buckets that the work falls within were still fundamentally sound. The museum strategic plan also supports several of the guiding principles of the City of St. Catharines Strategic Plan 2023 to 2027, as noted here on this slide. In addition to these guiding principles, this report connects to the following strategic directions within the strategic plan. In support of social well-being, increased capacity for volunteerism and community engagement through best practices. In support of cultural vibrancy, protect the city's heritage assets, provide exceptional venues and programming for the arts and heritage of St. Catharines that are accessible to community groups, and celebrate and promote the city's current and historic role in the Welland Canals. And related to organizational excellence, attract, retain, and engage talented employees, aspire to become an employer of choice, and provide exceptional customer service and communication to the community. This strategic plan also directly supports the city's recently approved culture plan through a number of the goals articulated through that plan, which you heard about the last time I was here, actually.
So you may be interested in what we did actually in updating the plan. So we did a lot of stuff. We reviewed, of course, all of the background contextual information. We undertook a site visit for a very enjoyable day at the museum and the Welland Canal Center. We did an environmental scan looking at the trends in the museum industry, what are the implications and what might the implications be for the strategic plan. We did a staff survey, interviews, workshop session. We interviewed a number of key stakeholders. We did a community survey, giving everyone a chance to participate. We got 110 very good, useful responses. We benchmarked other museums. What are they doing that we can learn from? There were about 12 of those that we looked at in terms of best practices. We developed the plan, we reviewed with staff, and then we finalized it, and now we're presenting it to you. Our philosophy very much throughout this project, as it is in every project, is to cast the net wide. So we want to provide everyone with something to say, who has something to add to the plan, an opportunity to do so. Some key findings. I guess, first of all, you should know there's very high regard within the community generally for the museum, what they do, what they collect, programs and services and so forth. But like we find with every strategic plan for any cultural institution anywhere, there's still a lack of awareness in the community of what you do and what you represent. So in our view, sort of the top three challenges would be, first of all, to deal with the collections backlog efficiently and effectively, as you have been doing, but you need to continue those efforts. Enhance community awareness, back to that second point I made. And then, and we'll talk about this in a moment, recognition amongst museum peers that you really are an exemplary community museum. When we did the benchmarking of the 12 other museums I was talking about, clearly you are ahead of the curve. You're as good as any of them and better than most. So that's something that needs to be enshrined and recognized, not only by you, but by the community overall.
So seen here is the museum's vision statement, which remains the same as in our last strategic plan, as I noted. This stretch goal continues to be a relevant benchmark for where we want to be at the end of the next 7 years. Note the key themes that are basically highlighted here in bold. I've got the wrong slide. Hold on a minute. We missed one. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So key themes, we want to be a leading local history museum, meaning that we aspire to be good or better than community museums anywhere. We'll be looked at as a role model or an exemplar. We want to be a community gathering place, meaning a focal point for all of St. Catharines. It's really important for us to engage our visitors, and you'll hear more about that as we go along. And then, of course, sustainability, curatorial leadership, and innovative programming and exhibits are all part of the notion of being a leading local history museum. Similar to the vision statement, the mission statement, as seen on this slide, was carried forward from the last strategic plan, and it currently continues to reflect who we are as an institution and what we do. This statement accurately reflects the role that the St. Catharines Museum continues to play in the community. And again, key themes are the bolded sections about engaging our visitors, involving them in immersive experiences, getting them involved in their own stories, and making the museum relevant to them. The story of the city, that's really what we do. We tell the story of the city with a focus on using our artifact collections to do so. And that's really kind of the main, the crux of everything comes right down to that. Cultural identity and history, explaining what it is about St. Catharines that's different, distinct, and unique. It's really your history that and the story that you bring that provides this distinctiveness and this uniqueness. And so we continue to keep that as a touchstone for everything we do. And then, of course, we're a community resource, and we emphasize that the museum is for all and that it intends to be accessible and available in as many ways as possible.
So in terms of achieving this vision and the mission that Kathy was talking about, we developed 5 strategic goals. These are sort of thought of as buckets of activity-related initiatives. And each of these 5 areas kind of support one another, so they're mutually reinforcing and supporting. In order to provide good governance, it requires leadership. In order to have good leadership in the community, you need engagement with that community. Stewardship is essential to what a museum is all about, and providing a vital visitor experience was another component of this. So we'll talk about each of these 5 strategic goals and some of the strategic initiatives underlying them. Turning first to the first one, governance, the idea here is that the museum will continue to operate in an efficient, accountable, responsible manner. And additionally, this plan puts emphasis on exploring opportunities to support municipal planning efforts across the corporation wherever that is possible. The governance area contained 8 different recommendations. I won't go through all 8 of them, but some of the highlights were to develop performance measures and reporting frameworks for all aspects of museum operations, to continue to strengthen the relationship with the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame, to review revenue generation activities and to support a strong financial future, review and renew the relationship with Brock University and Niagara College as key educational institutions that can be partners in many respects, and to review and renew the museum standards for community museum policies on a regular basis. Turning to the second area, leadership, the St. Catharines Museum, as the largest community museum in the Niagara region, strives to be a leader in museum operations across all aspects of the organization. And as I was saying from the benchmarking, we see that you're already doing this. To this end, the leadership goal puts in focus on building the strengths of the people and the resources within the organization to build resilience, as well as look towards succession planning for a strong framework for the ongoing future. This area contains 7 recommendations. Some of the highlights were to continue to develop the skills of staff through professional development activities, to develop partnerships that increase community involvement in the museum, to empower staff regarding volunteer leadership, implement and renew the museum's interpretive plan, and to expand the museum capacity to undertake research related to St. Catharines history. And Kathy, over to you.
As mentioned earlier, this plan builds on the last strategic plan, which directed a heavy emphasis on the revitalization of the visitor experience, including program and exhibitions. This new strategic plan will build on that work and will take the museum even further to connect with audiences in new and innovative ways. Under the engagement action area, there were 6 recommendations, and I'm just going to give you a couple highlights. Assessing our current membership program and refining and redeveloping a plan that is responsive to the community and its needs. Increasing and enhancing the museum's virtual presence in all aspects of operations. Continuing to refine the museum's visitor experience strategy to better meet the needs of our audience, and developing and implementing a plan to mark the 200th anniversary of the Welland Canals in 2029, which you heard about 2 weeks ago, so we're kind of like already one step ahead on our implementation. At the core of what the museum does is the artifact collections. These 750,000 artifacts and photographs tell an interconnected story of St. Catharines. Our focus in this plan is to prioritize collections management so that the collection is able to support the museum's mission and vision and continue to remain relevant. A focus on the ongoing challenges of maintaining and storing such a large collection will be necessary in order to be able to continue to use the collection to support all aspects of public engagement. The stewardship action area contains 7 recommendations. Highlights of those would be identifying current and future needs of the collections, including storage needs, and developing an action plan to meet these needs. Renewing the collection scope to be responsive and reflect both past collecting and future needs of collections growth. Advancing the principles of truth and reconciliation, and continuously improving the physical plant and infrastructure in support of caring for our collections.
And last, but certainly not least, is the 5th area, which is experience, the visitor experience. As the slide notes, the museum exists in many respects to create meaningful experiences for visitors to St. Catharines, as well as your own residents, to users. One of the organization's great strengths is that this prioritization of a high-quality visitor experience, and this plan provides guidance on the ways that the museum will continue to provide these relevant, meaningful, and captivating experiences for its visitors and users. Again, there are 7 recommendations contained within this bucket of activity. Some of the highlights are to continue to implement and renew the museum's visitor experience strategy, to prioritize accessibility in all design decisions, to connect the museum facility into active transportation and wayfinding networks across the region, reviewing the museum's gift shop strategy, and to diversify the retail product development and offerings made available by the museum.
The St. Catharines Museum came into this planning process with a very strong implementation plan already in use from the last strategic plan. With this framework in place, the museum was able to successfully implement the majority of the recommendations in the last plan. Those that were not addressed in the last plan were carried forward into this plan's implementation matrix. One example of that is the membership development program, which was really just something we couldn't get to. I just want to mention that there's actually a typo in this slide. It's actually 35 detailed recommendations. So with such a successful template for operationalizing the strategic plan, the new implementation plan provides 35 detailed recommendations over a 7-year period, and that is actually included as an appendix to the strategic plan document. Additionally, the plan is designed to provide the flexibility for the museum to add recommendations as implementation of some of the longer-term goals and objectives are brought into further focus. Implementation of the action items listed in the plan will have future financial implications. In general, the cost to implement this plan will be accommodated within existing operating budgets. However, larger projects may require a request for additional funds. As more detailed implementation plans are prepared, these costs will be projected going forward and included in future budget submissions to be identified through the next multi-year operating budget. All available reserves and grant opportunities will be explored as we go forward with that.
And I guess with that, we come to questions. I guess as a final comment, Greg and I do a lot of work with a lot of museums across Canada, and in our professional opinion, we believe that this plan is a strong roadmap, a credible roadmap for St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canal Centre to take its operations throughout the next 7 years to the year 2030. And we're very excited to have played a role and a part in pulling this together. So with that, thank you for your time this evening, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions or comments from councillors? I see Councillor Kushner. Councillor Kushner?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. You talk about performance measures, and one of the major performance measures is the visitor experience. What is happening to visitations over the past few years since the last strategic plan?
You handle that, because you've got the facts and figures right there.
I've got all these figures handy just in case that question got asked. Visitation to the museum has done quite well since COVID. I can tell you during the COVID years, it was a little sad, although it's still pretty healthy for a community museum, to be honest. But 2020 and 2021, 2020 was about 30,000 visitors, and 2021, just under 44,000 visitors. However, currently, our 4-year average visitation prior to COVID was about 105,000 roughly. So prior to COVID, 105,000. And currently in 2023, our visitation was 104,833. So we're roughly around there. And we're actually on track. Our current visitation for this year up to basically the end of last week was 99,041 visitors. So if we continue in that vein, we'll actually exceed probably the 105,000, which has kind of been the average we've had over the last several non-COVID years.
Okay, and what are your expectations for the next 10 years?
Well, it's hard to say, but based on current trends from COVID, it's been very busy. So bus visitation is really improving, and so that's helped. And so I'm hoping that we can get, closer to between 110,000, 120,000. I think would be a reasonable, conservative expectation by the end of that time period. Sometimes, it's a little bit dependent on how much resources we have to be able to really promote the site outside of our current market, and we are kind of limited by that, but at the same time, it's a very, very popular tourist destination, and as long as it continues to do that and the weather helps us in the summer and we continue to do great programming, I think we'll just continue to elevate our visitation to that.
And have you looked at the mix of your visitors, local versus non-local?
It's really hard to know that. However, I would say that most of the people that are coming for the visitors that come to see the ships in the viewing platform, I would say it's probably a third local and 2/3 visitors from beyond. But most local people say if they have friends who are coming from beyond, are bringing them to the visiting Lock 3. And we've been able to capture, just in the time that I've worked at the museum, we've captured a higher percentage of people who came just for the ships to come into the building and to visit the museum. And so that number continues to stay healthy, and I think that having that great experience inside as well as outside is what's going to draw both locals and visitors from abroad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to the presenters. May not be exactly a strategic planning question, but in terms of bricks and mortar, the physical condition of the facility, that I'm always interested in this. I know you've updated exhibits. In terms of the major systems, HVAC, electrical, roof, et cetera, what kind of shape are we in at the museum now?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the HVAC replacement project is currently happening. Should be. I would expect that project to be completed by the end of the year, from what I can understand. So that's in process. The roof project for the rest of the roof that hasn't been replaced is expected, I believe, early in the new year. It was supposed to be this year, but just some problems with getting materials, that project just got moved over to the early part of next year after the cold weather. I don't think anyone wants to work on the metal roof during the winter. So that's going to happen in the spring. Otherwise, the rest of the building, we had a large accessibility grant, if you recall, where we replaced a good chunk of the front and the back part of the building, so that the concrete and the sidewalks, all of those things are in really great shape. We have good visitor amenities, and the building is kept in pretty good condition. So I think we're in good shape from the physical plant perspective.
Good. I know that the elevator's been temperamental. How are we doing with the elevator?
Well, the building was built in 1990, so the elevator is seeing, I hate to say that it's seeing its age from 1990, but apparently that's old for elevators. So, yeah, it would be great to have a new elevator, but it still works currently.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to the presenters. First of all, thank you for great work. There's a lot of good work here. And I really support and admire the work that the museum does, but I will follow up a little bit on what Councillor Kushner started. I certainly feel that there is not enough quantification and measurability in this plan. Like the implementation plan is good from the standpoint that it shows timetables and it says we want to do this by a certain time. But it seems to me that we have certain measurable areas, such as visitation, which Councilor Koestner mentioned, and there's got to be visitation that can be broken down by facility, by area, and there is no mention whatsoever of revenue, and I assume you earn some revenue in different ways. So I would certainly like to see more detail in those areas. You know, I don't know what all the variables are you look at, but for example, a target of how many exhibits you're going to rotate per year or something, whatever you look at. So I don't feel that the plan is ready for me to endorse it without that, but you know, I'm more than happy to listen to what you have to say about that.
Yeah, you, and then I'll follow.
Okay. Through the mayor to the councillor. We do, as you say, track many statistics at the museum related to not just our daily operation in the public eye, like revenues in our gift shop, donations, visitation, those kinds of things. But we also do track things that are kind of what more people would see as behind the scenes, number of people who do research requests, photo orders, how many artifacts are we cataloging, those kinds of things. So we do keep track of most of those kinds of statistics, and they are looked at definitely by me as staff and passed along to my senior management above that to see if there are any trends that we should be concerned about from that perspective. But we also are capturing and measuring some significant key performance indicators as part of the dashboard that council was presented related to the council City of St. Catharines strategic plan. And there's a bunch of museum-related performance indicators on that dashboard as well, which includes number of visitors, but also includes things like how is our volunteer base doing? Are we continuing with the number of volunteer hours that we have? Are we not? What's happening? How can we adjust to that? And how many people are registered in museum programs? What kind of programs we have? That kind of thing. And so for us, having all of those is helpful, as you say, and we look at them from our own perspective to help to guide what our program is. But the plan does suggest that we create a report card that helps to develop what those optimal levels are based on some of the benchmarking that John and his team did and what we see as museum workers using that to create the report card that we can then bring back to council regularly to say, how are we doing on all of these things compared to what we have done in the past? Did you want to add to that?
Thank you, Kathy, and through you, Deputy Mayor, to everybody. Kathy pretty much said it all. We always think of kind of an evaluation process as consisting of not just the performance measures, but also targets against which those measures can be tracked. And so many of the dimensions, the variables that Kathy was talking about are things that you're already tracking, and that's great. We suggest in the plan that there be performance targets are also articulated so that you can tell when things are being accomplished, and if things are not achieving a target, there are usually reasons for that, and you can sort of determine that. So it becomes an ongoing evaluation tool that's very useful. This is, of course, a 7-year plan. It's a long time between now and the year 2030. So you can set performance targets to some extent, but always, new opportunities arise, situations change, and so it has to be sort of nimble to track progress as you go through the years. But our benchmarking review showed that you're doing a pretty good job in terms of capturing the kind of information that is needed, and in the plan itself we're suggesting that you be a bit more refined in terms of the targets you articulate so that you're able to measure as well as show progress.
I have Councillor Garcia back on, please.
Thank you for those answers, and thank you, Kathleen. It certainly sounds like if you're tracking all the right variables, but in my opinion, tracking them is not good enough. Like you have to, how do you know that you're accomplishing anything just because you're tracking it? That's why the term performance target is so critical. If you're tracking this certain variable, are you doing okay? Are you achieving what your target was? And I don't see neither of those in this plan. So anyway, thank you.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, to the presenters. How often is the room upstairs used, and do we try to promote that for locals to rent it out? I mean, Deputy Mayor and myself, we were there not too long ago with the Trinidad and Tobago trade group, and it's a beautiful room up there, and the view in that. So I imagine it's underutilized.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I guess it depends on how you'll define underutilized.
Okay.
If you think, if utilization, I guess this goes back to Councillor Garcia's comment a bit. Currently, it's pretty much booked most weekends. It's quite popular and relatively busy. A lot of local people rent that space. I would say 80% at least, probably more than that. So it is busy then, but the rest of the time is empty, pretty much. It does get used for meetings and things on occasion throughout the week, but I wouldn't say that it's packed busy every single day of the week.
But it's used fairly
like
well,
if you
though.
were a hotel and looking to rent your space, right?
Right.
So.
No, okay, I'm glad to see that's being used, though. That's great, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ratzlaff.
Thank you. Thank you, through you, Chair, to the presenters. Thanks for the presentation. I just, a few questions. I was pleased to see that here, the reason for coming to the museum, number 4, I guess, was they were stopping by while visiting while on the Welland Canal trails. Because I just think that those two assets, the trail that goes along the Welland Canal and the museum are really great assets that our city has, and I'm glad to see that they're working together. I'm wondering if you've seen more visitors, like more synergies with that trail lately, or is that something that's increasing? That's something that's decreasing? Is that something that the plan prioritizes to find ways to bring folks who are using the trail into the museum or accommodate, what they'd be looking for in a visit?
Field that one. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. During COVID, it was actually quite, the visitation we were able to allow through the museum was a lot of people who were just trying to get out into the fresh air, be out and about and on the rec trail. There were a lot of people on the rec trail that were coming to us. So that for sure made a huge difference. And also people that were coming from outside of our, outside the city, Toronto area, stuff like that were looking to go to Niagara Falls, wanted someplace nice to be able to walk or to hang out, and then they could also come into the museum, so that was great. And it actually kind of started a bit of a momentum of people using that space, the rec trail, to come into the museum as well. I think that there's still a lot of work that we can do to connect with the users of the trail to use our space other than for just the washroom and the water filling station, which is why we have that recommendation in the plan to connect more with active transportation networks.
Yeah, I think that's great. This might be really self-serving, but a coffee stop on that trail, I think, would be really great. That's a perfect spot.
I heard a lot of that, didn't you?
Yeah, the only other question that I kind of had was I'm curious how this is a really great asset that our city has, and I think it dovetails really well with the cultural strategic plan. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about how it works with because we heard about the cultural strategic plan, and then obviously there's a Parks and Rec strategic plan, and I know that. I'm just curious how those types of how the museum's strategic plan is integrated into the other ones, how they can work together.
Sure. I guess, yeah, we of course see the museum as a key asset, cultural asset to the community overall. And in terms of supporting the objectives of the culture plan, it clearly, everything in the strategic plan here does support the culture plan. I think as a mechanism to draw visitors into the community and expose more people to the sort of wide range of cultural assets that St. Catharines has, the museum can do a great job of doing that. As Kathy was saying, maybe 2/3 of your visitors are people from outside the region who can learn about what else St. Catharines has to offer, can come spend time and money and all that kind of thing. So not just in terms of a cultural asset for the local resident community, but as an economic generator for the community overall, it can function very well.
Yeah, yeah.
And does.
Yeah, I could see it definitely helping funnel people into other places in St. Catharines where, you know, they could visit and spend money and have a good time. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. And before we vote on the presentation, I do want to remind those at home that we do have bus service going to the museum on a regular basis, so there's no excuse for not getting there. Thanks to Councillor Stevens of the day, who pushed very hard to get that bus down there, and I see it down there all the time. I know it took my grandson down there this summer, and I can tell you I enjoyed it just as much as he did. And lastly, there is an off-site museum if you want, and it's the St. Catharines Sports Hall of Fame that I'm very endeared to. Without Kathleen and her staff, we probably would not, well, we would not have a Sports Hall of Fame at the Meridian Center. And you can't definitely talk or count the number of people that go through that on a day or on a game day. So it's very interesting to go there also. With that, can I have a motion to receive the presentation, please? Councillor Dodge, seconded by Councillor Lindell. Thank you very much. Motion that Council receive the presentation from Kathleen Pell, John Linton, regarding the St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canals Center Strategic Plan 2024 to 2030. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great presentation. And can I get a councillor to remove the recommendation in the report, please? Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Dodge. Thank you. And the recommendation that councillor endorse the renewed St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canals Strategic Plan 2024-2030 attached as Appendix 1. Any questions of staff? I think you just had them all. So I'll ask the clerk for a recorded vote. It's always just my fear this thing's not going to warm up, but it always does.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
No.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
That was Councillor Jenny Stevens who got the bus. Yes.
What did I say? Oh, did I not say Councillor Stevens? Oh, Jenny Stevens, that's right. Yes, okay. Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Phillips?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Sorry, my big mistake. I'll probably hear about it, but it's okay. Okay, moving to 9.3, Community Recreation, Culture Services, Recreation and Culture Programs, Niagara Olympic Track and Field Club grant application. Can I get a councillor to move the recommendation? Councillor Kushner, second by Councillor Harris. Recommendation that staff or the report CRCS-155-2024 Niagara Olympic Track and Field Club grant application support be received for information. And we would need to name an alternate funding source. There's an alternate motion going forward by Councillor Kushner. And we would need to name an alternate funding for a civic project fund and Parks Legacy Fund of $210,000 each, or strictly the civic project fund. And I see Councillor Kushner.
Option 2, Mr. Mayor, which is the civic fund.
Okay. Could you turn that? Okay, sorry. You're suggesting option 2 so that all the funds come from the civic project fund. Thank you. Questions, comments? I also see Mrs. Stewart here today, so if we really have a technical questioned that she'd be here to answer that. She flew all the way back from Australia visiting her daughter just to be here tonight, so. Any further concerns? Calling the question? Go ahead.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Phillips?
Yes,
And that's carried unanimous.
thank you. And best of luck getting the rest of the money, Mrs. Stewart. I hope you succeed. Thank you. Pardon? Normally not, but tonight, seeing as how you came all the way back from Australia, come on up. You have to come up here, though. We won't be able to hear you. Yes, I do.
Actually, I've just come from that, so it's very brief. The Niagara Olympic Club appreciates your support for the rejuvenation project at the track and field facility. Our presentation to Council on September 3rd was well received, and the surprise appearance by Mohammed Ahmed was enjoyed by all. I commend the city staff for their efficiency and diligence in communications and completing documents and reports. I am personally grateful for their contributions to ensure the process worked within the provincial timelines, which were very short. Onward, our application to the province will be submitted this week, and then let the wild rumpus start. Thank you.
And thank you for all your hard work. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Moving to motions, spring cleanups for Fairview and John Page Parks. Moving the motion, I have Councillor McPherson. Seconding the motion, Councillor Dodge. And the motion's in front of you. I'm sure you're going to want to speak to it, Councillor McPherson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just so I think last meeting or a couple of meetings ago, we heard from one of the residents who lives around Fairview Park. I think if anybody has spent any time there, they will understand that it needs some additional attention. I will ask, if possible, the Director of Municipal Works to just explain why we're asking for the money. Or why?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, John Page Park and Fairview Park are passive parks, which means that they are not staffed, they are served on a rotating basis. The grass is cut typically every 5 to 10 days, and then there's a garbage pickup with that roving crew. The work that was specifically looked at as being over and above the current level of service was to clean out undergrowth brush that has occurred along the tree lines around the fence. This undergrowth brush has been, in many places, contaminated with some of the byproducts of the homeless situation within the park, making it a little, besides the fact that we don't normally clean up, even the cleanup that we are planning to do if this motion passes, will be a little more extensive, and we'll actually have to clean out the undergrowth as we go through that area.
Thank you. And just to add to that, it's I think if anybody's taken a walk through the park recently, you will notice the amount or the number of encampments, but also the result of what's been left over from the encampments. And this will, we think, or will help make it easier for staff to clean up on an ongoing basis, but as well make it a little easier for the residents as well, because with a lot of the growth that's happened, encampments have been, people have put encampments in behind the weeds and in behind the growth, and it makes it a fairly unsafe situation for many of the seniors and many of the families that are visiting there. So I hope you can support this and we can add this to the, that everyone's okay adding it to or encouraging the mayor to add it to his budget so that this ongoing maintenance can keep going. Thank you.
Councillor Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I have a couple of questions. First of all, through you to staff, maybe through the CAO, can you please refresh our minds about the motion that the mayor made a few councils ago regarding where the funds that we were using for encampments would be committed?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. If you're referencing the, essentially the reallocation of the funds that up until the end of 2024 are going for outreach, which will now be diverted into cleanup efforts, that funding is more for, to Director Smith's point, the day-to-day cleaning up of the parks in and around encampments. I believe what's being discussed in this motion is to do some very specific undergrowth cleanup that would be sort of over and above that, which would require some specialized type of equipment. But essentially, the funds that we're looking at in the previous motion, that is still to be determined on how we're going to work through that through our casual labor force as well in the summer months. But this is a little bit different of a service level.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the director, I'm trying to understand how you can do this cleanup if the encampments are still there.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, two things. The majority of this cleanup is around, let me take a step back to take a step forward. In general, these encampments and tents tend to move within a park as complaints or noises or neighbors move in. And so there's a lot of cleanup that can be done in areas that were previously occupied that are no longer occupied. And the second thing, we have posted this camp. We are planning to do a removal of the homeless encampments due to concerns raised by the NRP with the amount of theft going on in the shopping areas next to the encampments. Again, this tends not to be the homeless people, but the people that prey on the homeless that is causing a lot of this issue. But unfortunately, the only way to address it is to actually move out the encampments. So it has been posted, which means we are planning for the removal of the camps this week, and that will give us a short window to actually complete cleanup through the entire park.
Thank you for that. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director, so the cleanup would be done after the encampments are removed, or?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we would start the cleanup immediately, but we would clean up the areas once the encampments are removed in the areas that are occupied at this point.
Okay. And the 17,000 is your estimate, or?
Through you, my staff has done a look at the work, and yes, the 17,000 is an estimate. It is a specialized work. Whenever we do residual encampment cleanup, there is always biohazards that we have to take care of, and that is unfortunately very expensive and requires a specialized contractor.
Thank you. And one more question through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I don't know if the director can answer this or maybe the mover. The motion calls for allocating funds in future years, but if we're removing the encampments, why would we have to spend the money again in another year?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, maybe I can start off, and if the councillor has anything to add, they can jump in. The unfortunate part is a posting of encampment only moves the residents out for a short term. There's no way at this point through the tools that are available to staff or to the police that we could move encampments out of a park and keep encampments out of the park. So there will be encampments moved back in at some point, and we estimate that it will require, to keep this level of service, it will require 2 special cleanups a year, one in the spring and one in the fall.
Thank you, and sorry, I keep saying one last question, but are there other parks in the city where we have the same situation and where we're gonna have to do a major cleanup and budget that and remove the encampment? Like, what makes this park special, just because we approved changes to it, or?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'll start on the other parks and maybe the councillor can chime in as to why this park. So yes, there are other parks within the city that require special cleanups that are done through the monies that we have set aside for encampment cleanup at this point. At this time, there are no other parks that have the specific undergrowth problem adjacent to businesses that this park has, which makes this park somewhat unique. But yes, there's cleanup required in many parks around the city.
Thank you.
Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, hold on, Councillor Williamson. Councillor McPherson wants to respond to that.
Sorry, yeah, just want to add that as along with the businesses, there are residential apartments that run all the way along the one side of Fairview Park in John Page Park, and they're also, that's where the encampments are. They regularly will walk through the fence. Not through the fence, through the gates in the fence, the openings in the fence, and this undergrowth and this unsafe kind of nature is making it very difficult for them. A lot of them are seniors, a lot of them have small children, they're new Canadians. So that's the other aspect of the cleanup and why it requires this special cleanup and ongoing maintenance. More than, say, other parks, as well as that it's, because it isn't staffed on a regular basis and it is a passive park, it doesn't have the same staffing like a Montebello Park or a Lakeside Park, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I walked it again this afternoon. It looked like there was fewer encampments than there were in August, but there's still a large number. And there's some very large encampments with multiple people dwelling in them. It looks to me like staff has already defoliated some sections along the eastern side where the apartments are. Through you to the Director of Engineering, Public Works, if you could confirm that, please.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we did a trial cleanup there using our robotic mower as a trial, which is what you've seen in the bitumen cleanup. Part of the problem that we had with the traditional method of cleaning undergrowth is that the whippersnippers were actually kicking up needles, and there was a safety hazard to our staff. So we've been looking for a better, safer way to do the work in there, and that's why we went in to test the robotic mower, which thankfully has worked quite well and will be part of our tools ongoing in this type of situation.
Other concern I have is how are we not going to just move this problem elsewhere, or relocate to a nearby park? Is there any measures in place to mitigate that from happening?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, unfortunately, we have no tools that can prevent that from happening.
I can see consequences with that. And then in terms of the finances, as a local tier municipality, really we should not be assuming these costs. Are we still making an effort to seek reimbursement from other layers of government for these monies, these expenditures?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, yes, we are, Councillor. We've been sort of, we track our costs specific to all of these across the corporation, and we have been through our advocacy efforts, whether it's with dealing with the region or whether it's dealing through as the Deputy Mayor mentioned earlier, the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus has a direct line to the various ministries at the provincial level, and we've all been making that case for financial support because we are on, as you know, the front line when it comes to addressing some of these larger issues.
Well, thank you. This does seem to be an interim solution, and I'm concerned that there'll be some wider consequences, but I will support what's before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just I have a question to staff for clarification. So it used to be a golf course there, correct?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor,
Yes.
So
that's
it
correct.
was probably well-maintained. So when the golf course closed down, did council or staff, that's when we decided just to let it go as a passive park, and that's why it's so rough now?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, yes, the service level was determined to be that of a passive park.
All right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Harris?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the Director of Municipal Works. You said something interesting I just wanted you to clarify. There's a lot of crime at the like with the businesses, but it's the people that prey upon the homeless people? I just wanted to know how you could clarify that.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, so there's, and this comes from our working group with the Niagara region and the NRPS. There are a lot of people associated with homeless camps that aren't actually homeless, but are there to do activities that actually prey on the homeless and feed into the crime in the area.
Okay. I guess my next thing would be I would wonder if this could be like a friendly amendment or maybe a direction to staff that perhaps staff could come up with a list of all the areas that are problemsome. So for example, the 12 Mile Creek and areas like that. And then we could actually come up with a plan and maybe figure out how we can tackle this as a group. Like, this is a good idea, but I'm sure there's quite a few more, especially in my ward. So, our ward. So is that okay to have that
Everybody's
as a
ward.
direction? Can we add that in there so I can actually
Yes,
see
we'll
it?
give that direction to Director Smith. Can you come up with something at your earliest convenience?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, my staff have a current list, so we can provide that relatively quickly.
And
Thank you very
can you
much.
identify which ones are the worst and what needs to be addressed immediately? Like, is there...
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, so we can identify what's currently the worst. That tends to change on a fairly regular basis as migration takes out in and out of encampment areas.
Okay, well, I guess my next question, through the Deputy Mayor, is how long have some of the encampments been along the 12 Mile Creek?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, there's been encampments on and off the 12 Mile Creek since the spring of this year.
Okay, and I guess my next question would be through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the Director of Municipal Works. Since we've taken over the management, of the 12 Mile Creek, the path, have we changed the protocol? Because I seem to remember OPG would just come in there and literally clean it up. So I'm just wondering, how do we handle those situations?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that as the licensee, and this was explained to OPG and as part of the licensee agreement, we have to follow our protocols for encampment cleanup, which would be the same protocol as if it was any other park within the city.
Okay, so I guess my next question, I'm just going to keep going on here. I guess my next question through the Deputy Mayor to the Director of Municipal Works. When does community safety or children's safety override an encampment? So say, for example, if there's an encampment in Burgoyne Woods close to the playground, can we just remove it? Like, what trumps what?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that is a difficult question to answer because of all the court decisions that are getting placed in by various jurisdictions within the province, which always seems to leave us reacting to encampments, as the courts are very quick to point out what we can't do, but there's really never anything in there as to what we can do. So a lot of it is trial by error. So we do have some protocol around what we call sensitive infrastructure. We have some protocol around public safety, but these are challengeable through the court system. So we are very careful to work with our partners, NASO, the region, the NRPS, to ensure that we are going to meet the legal challenge. We can safely defend us from any legal challenge on removing the parks, other encampments.
Okay, so I guess my next question through the Deputy Mayor to the Director of Municipal Works is, what would be the exposure, or maybe the Director of Legal Services, if a child got pricked by a syringe in one of our parks and we hadn't cleaned up that area because it was an encampment?
Legal?
Yeah. Thank you, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the councillor. If that happened, and I understand that this is a hypothetical situation and we are speculating, it would be up to the legal guardian of said child to essentially bring a claim against the municipality, and depending on what they would claim, I would assume, for the sake of the example, it would be negligence, and we would have to show that the municipality wasn't negligent in the circumstances.
Okay, I guess through the Deputy Mayor to the Director of Legal, how would you prove that you weren't negligent if you didn't clean it up and you knew there was a encampment there with syringes in a public park that our kids use?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the councillor, with all due respect, the question implies that there will be syringes with encampments, and that may not be the case.
Okay. But how would we know if there were not if we didn't remove these encampments? Like I get this whole idea of that let's let people stay in our parks and stuff, but it also infringes on everybody that's an actual taxpayer and uses parks. So I'm just trying to understand how we balance that.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the councillor, it is my understanding that Director Smith and his team is doing the best they can to balance the issues with respect to these encampments. And they go out there and they have a list and they do what they can. But this particular hypothetical situation is as such that it's almost impossible to answer.
Okay.
I think we're getting off topic a bit here. We're talking about Fairview Park, and I think, again,
get what you're
on
saying.
Friday, we spent 5 or 6 hours talking about this, and I don't want to prolong that long. Your point's well taken, without a doubt. And if you want to put forth a request
I would just like to actually have a list of all the encampments, and
You're
I'd
gonna
like
get
to,
one.
and I'd like to find out what the actual protocol is and
Yes.
timeline for removal.
Yeah, you've given direction to Director Smith to provide that, and he said he would very soon. So that's what we're asking
Thank you.
for. Councilor Ratzlaff, did you have you're okay? One question to Director Christie. As far as Fairview Park, the development of it, when are we going to start that? We've seen designs. When's it going to get started?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd have to get back to you about definitive dates. I don't have that handy in front of me right now, but from what I recall, when we last met, the background information when we presented that looked at us starting probably midway through next year.
And at that time, you will have a dedicated staff member on site at all times, plus a seasonal?
To the
Director Smith?
chair,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
well, I think that's more of a question for Director Smith, but I think that we would plan for a seasonal staff member there as we develop, not as we're starting construction, but as we're putting things into place in the park.
Director Smith, do you want to add to that?
Yes, through you, or to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that would be part of the budget considerations as this park develops and requires additional staffing there. We would bring that forward to council for their approval to put the staff in place to staff the park.
For what my 2 cents are worth, I would suggest we get a staff member on there almost immediately to make sure that what we are putting in there is maintained and not destroyed. And at that time, that full-time staff member can do the job that in maintaining the underbrush or whatever, and do that also. But that's up to you and your budget. Thank you. Any other comments before we call the question? To the clerk.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes, but I just don't see it where it says it's going to come back with a list. Is that just a direction, or we know that's going to come back?
We have that recorded as staff direction.
Perfect, thank you. So yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Phillips. Deputy Mayor Phillips.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. No, you're okay. Councillor Kushner?
Thank you. We have a report that's forthcoming on solar panels in the city.
Correct.
But Toronto is going further than that, and they're talking about covering parking lots with solar panels. And that is an initiative that comes from the Ontario Clean Air Alliance. And I'd like that to put into the staff report, which is forthcoming.
Thank you. Any idea when that staff report will be coming forward? Now we've added a little bit more to it. It's been a while since we asked for it. Can you give us a basic timeline when we get that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the staff report was to look at other opportunities for generation for St. Catharines Hydro. We could do a report for solar panels to address the request from council, maybe a little sooner. The report with regards to generation opportunities is a little more complicated.
That's fine. So you'll go ahead with Councillor Kushner's request immediately, so if not sooner. Thank you. Councillor Williamson, you have a report request?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Yes, last week, 7 impressive young women won a new hearing challenging the provincial government's emissions targets. It was a unanimous Ontario Court of Appeal decision about holding governments accountable for their contributions to climate change. It does have the potential to have implications for other levels of governments, including us. So I'm not asking for a report right away, but just asking this to be put on our radar screen and to follow the issue along. Thank you.
Are you directing that to one particular director?
Well, I assume it would be
I look at them
more
and they're all shaking their head no, but
legal, please.
okay, thank you. And can I have a mover to receive the report request, please? Councillor Lindell, seconded by Councillor Garcia. Thank you. All in favor? Great. Number 13, Committee and Task Force minutes. Can I have a mover to receive and file the minutes? Councillor Stevens, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Dodge. The motion is that council receive and file the minutes of the advisory committee of council as presented. All in favor? And there are no items for closed sessions. Bylaws. The bylaws issued on the council agenda as A to D be read a first time and considered and passed, and that they be signed and executed by the mayor and the clerk. Councilor moving that motion, please. Councilor McPherson, seconded by Councilor Stevens. Thank you. And I see Councilor Kushner's getting very excited because I'm asking for the motion for adjournment. Thank you. And seconded by his cohort. Councilor Harris, chauffeur. Thanks, folks. Have a good evening.